Good evening, everybody. It's Phil Russert, and we have another episode of Creatorcon Q&A. Happy Friday. Hope you all had a great week. I hope today was a great day. Hope you're getting ready for the weekend. We have a great guest tonight. We're going to sit down and talk with him very shortly. But before we do, my usual shout-outs. We've got Comics Cast with Joe Tolliver and Jarrell Motos. They're a great show. They have a YouTube channel. Please go check them out. They're also on Facebook. They get a lot of great guests. They're big in the indie scene, very entertaining. So go check out Comics Cast. We've got Android's Amazing Podcast with James Santana. He's a very knowledgeable guy. He talks a lot about comics, even the stuff that's coming out this week. So go check them out. We've got Mad Titan Comics. That's Mad Titan _comics on Instagram. And Eric Gunderson, who's the owner and operator on Facebook. Everything you want, keys, slabs, dollar books, you name it, and he's got it. We also have Andy Lee with Let'sDoThis.com. That's www.lesdudis.com. Everything pop culture and geek culture. So go check him out. And we have Art by Kike. That's Enrique Lopez. That's his Inking with Kike show on his Instagram, 8 p.m. every Monday night. So please go check that out. He inks live while he has a special guest. And you can go check that out Mondays at 8 p.m. on Instagram. I also want to mention Heroes for Causes. They are awesome. They're a great group of people. They make a comic book. They have two comic books out now. One is for cystic fibrosis, and one deals with pediatric cancer, two major issues and chronic illnesses. And we all know how devastating they can be for the person and their families. So please go check them out. It's Comics for Causes. And you can go buy comic books, quality work as well. It's a great comic book, and you know that the money is going to something worthwhile. So please check that out. And lastly, I just want to let you know, NSCLiveTV.com, the comic book network created for geeks by geeks, featuring live sales, comic shops, creators, podcasts, cosplay, news, and interviews. That's NSCLive.com. And I do want to do one other shout out, actually. Go check out the Facebook group, Artists, Jobs, and Showcase. If you're an artist, they're a great group, friendly, and they like to showcase your art and let you, get you out there and give you exposure. So go check out the Facebook group, Artists, Jobs, and Showcase. Now that we got that all out of the way, tonight's guest is a really good guy. I learned some new things about him, actually, which are pretty cool. You probably know him most famously for writing X-Men and Generation X. He's written Superman, Redhood, and the Outlaws. He's written a screenplay for Happy Death Day, which was a movie in the theaters in 2017. He's a well-known writer in comic books. He's a really nice guy, and he's my guest tonight. Please welcome Scott Lobdell.
Hey, everybody.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. You got the Christmas cheer going on, I see there. That's good.
Yes, it's right around the corner.
It's coming very fast.
From what I hear... I saw a day that said that Christmas was coming. I was like, what?
John Ollinger came on. He said, finally, I've been waiting all week for this show. Hi, Scott.
Hey, how's it going? How you been?
So, before we get into your career, if you don't mind, I didn't know that you had done stand-up comedy.
Yes, I was a stand-up between 88 and 92. So I did pretty much full-time, and I was in the process of breaking as a writer. And so I was making just enough as a writer and just enough as a comedian to starve. So
cat food's expensive.
But yeah, even back then. So, but it was what's the word? When I was doing comedy a lot until the weekend I got the X-Men, and then that just pretty much changed my whole life because it went from it's a really X-Men was like a 70-hour week job, so that meant that I wasn't able to pursue that stuff like I needed to,
So how was it when you got the call to do X-Men?
Well, I was gonna say people think of stand-up as like, you go on stage and you have a microphone and then you walk off, and like Chappelle can do that, but everybody else, you have to really write your material and hone it, and constantly come up with new material, and so that just became impossible to do while I was, when suddenly I got the comic gig. So,
do you feel you made the right choice?
What's funny is me and Jon Stewart we both perform at the same club, and he went on to become Jon Stewart. And at the time, wasn't the Daily Show. He had a show, and I visited him on the set, and I gave him some comics. But it was interesting because we were both looking at each other, going, "Oh wow, that's a really interesting career." And then he went on to the Daily Show, but back then he was doing comedy, and he used to have one of my favorite jokes, which was completely non-political, and he wasn't even doing politics back then. But the joke was, I don't do impressions. I do first impressions. My first impression of the Pope. Nice hat. Yes, made me laugh. So. But yeah, no, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I made the different. I don't know. I don't. I try. I don't think I'm a person that looks at my life and thinks, should I? You know what I mean? Like, so.
Yeah, I'm not that way either.
Yeah, you're kind of, it's a speeding train.
And you just take your path and you go with it, and if it doesn't go the right way, you make it go the right way. Exactly.
Yeah, or you just get off at the next station and you try, but like you can't go back. So.
Right. So what's the sense in dwelling? Yeah. Just Trish said hello, guys.
It's been a fun career. I mean, I wouldn't change that for. I was telling you before before we started, like, stand up, you tell a joke and immediately whether the audience likes it or doesn't like it. With writing, you can write something, and like I was in Brazil 2 years ago, and people were coming up to me with comic books that I'd written 25 years ago, and telling me how much it meant to them, and how it was their first comic, or they loved this scene, or they loved the character. And it's interesting because it's a whole different connection to an audience that that's completely different from stand-up, which again is in the moment. So.
Yeah, you get the instant gratification from comedy, but you get longevity with the comics.
Yeah, and the other thing was that we were talking about when I got the X-Men, which is when I got the X-Men, I had to do my first issue overnight. It was around Christmas time, actually.
Really?
It was just before the Marvel Christmas party, and Bob Harris came into Terry Kavanaugh's office, where I'd been doing the bulk of my work with Marvel Comics Presents and Excalibur. And he looks at me and goes, Scott, walk with me. And I'm like, okay. And this was maybe, I think this was the second time I'd ever spoken to Bob in my life. And I can tell you about the first time, which was funny. But so we walked out to his office. I'm like, okay, I'm not sure what's going on. And he takes me into his office and he says, picks up these curled up faxes. And he says, 22 pages in 24 hours. Can you write this script? Because the book has to go out like the day after tomorrow. And I said, sure. And I think what stand-up did that got me to that moment, and through the next 6 months of it being the emergency X-Men guy, because I was writing Uncanny and X-Men literally overnight from faxes from Jim and Will's that were like circles and squares. Like if it had a circle and two scratch marks on either side, that was Rogue. And circle and it had 3 lines, that was Wolverine. And there was no plot. There was like the idea that these guys had in their head, and then there was these factions. So, but the thing is that like with comedy, as you watch, you watch somebody do stand-up routine, you don't get to stop in the middle of your act and be like, you know what, let me try this joke differently. I want to go back and tell the same joke and try it. And you have to. It's almost like jazz. You have to be in the moment, and you have to go with what is happening in front of you, like what you get. Sometimes you get a good audience, sometimes you get a bad audience, sometimes you get an amazing audience, sometimes you get a heckler, sometimes you get somebody in the audience who's charming, and you can build a rapport. So it's you pull them into the show. So there's all these things that go on, and I think that unlike any other writing that I had done at that point, I was I had the biggest spotlight in the world. I mean, it was 700,000 readers.
Yep.
During that era.
Yeah.
Like 700,000 times 2 books. That's, I don't know, so many people. And so I didn't have time to, go back and finesse. And, I need a few days to write this. And that I just had to do it in the moment. And I think that it was that comedy background that allowed me to, go with the flow.
Well, you apparently did it right because, I mean, so far your career has been very well received and you were on the books for quite some time. I always loved Excalibur. Obviously, I'm a big X-Men fan. And then, you started the title Generation X. So what inspired you to get into writing to begin with?
I was a psychology major in college. And it occurred to me that everybody in the world had a problem, and I didn't want to spend the rest of my life listening to everybody's problems. And I was like, that's psychologist. So I was searching around trying to figure out what to do, and it occurred to me that psychology, among other things, is the art of is about conflict and resolution. You have a problem, you try to solve it, and that's really what every single comic book story, every movie really is about. You create, the story is about a conflict, and you have to go with the character and try to get them through it. I wouldn't say, I shouldn't say every movie. Anytime I say anything like every, people will be like, well, not my favorite movie. And you're like, okay, whatever. So, but there are a lot of movies that are about, putting a character in conflict and having to resolve it. Most good comic books are about creating or having a character in a conflict and resolving it. And so I realized, well, okay, I love everything I've learned, but maybe there's a way to apply that in a different way. Maybe I'm not somebody who's going to sit there in with somebody on the couch and me go, whoa.
Tell me about your childhood. Jason Getchell, good to come out, man. Appreciate seeing you here. I met Scott many moons ago at a comic store in Massachusetts when he was writing Generation X. He had a toothbrush in his back pocket, and he asked me if I had figured out Monet's secret yet. Good times, great guy.
Memories.
Yeah, I got a lot of people who told me that you were such a pleasure at my show.
Dental hygiene is important, just so you know.
Yeah. I had gotten a lot of people that said you were such a pleasure to meet when you were at my show last year. And I didn't even know that you had bought art for my daughter, so that was really cool. Thank you. So,
you know what? I've tried really hard to be that guy who sells prints at comic book conventions. Fabian is very, very, very good at it. I am very, very bad at it. What I often do is I'll go to a comic book convention and I'll seek out the people with that sell Uncanny X-Men or Generation X, and then I put them on the table. And even if somebody can't afford a print, I'll give them a signed comic, or I'll give them the print and the signed comic, or I'll give them the print if they get a, I'll give them the comic, get a print, but they're like, oh no, I can't afford it. So then I literally all I do all day long is give out comics and prints
and draw for Art Bear.
Yes, draw for Archie Bear. Yep. But the other thing too is that my father, if he knew that I was charging for comic books or whatever, or prints, he would roll over in his grave. He would be mortified. And what I discovered is that, I never charge. I didn't charge a convention appearance. I don't charge, maybe airfare, but that's it. And what I discovered is that when creators all started charging for prints and everything, writers specifically, and and I had people that left of me charging and people that right of me charging, and I didn't have any prints, and I was, people would come and go, how much is it for a comic book? And I would go, for you it's free, which but what I discovered is people don't have much interest in free, so I'll put a sign that says $20 a print, but then I just give it away, because then it's weird. It's the strangest thing.
They feel like they got a deal.
I want to, they just, if I'm there and I have no sign up and I have no, they're just, what's this? What is he doing? But, so I finally figured out a system where I'm happy and they're happy, and, so, and I've always said too that I get, comics from, I get paid well enough by by DC, and people are spending, $5. I just saw this new DC Future Slate or something.
Yeah.
Books are $4.99 now.
Yeah.
So, so $5 is, they've spent their money. They can get their autograph and, their comics, and, so.
Well, that's a great attitude. Not everybody shares that attitude. So, I mean, obviously people have to make money, but
there was a time when I was doing it, but then I just felt so guilty that I stopped. So if anybody's reading, goes, well, why did he charge me $20? I did it, but I realized I just, it would make me sick.
Well, you just did this whole comic book giveaway through everything going on. Online. If anybody hasn't been following.
Yeah, it was such a nightmare. I mean, it costs, I can't even tell you how much it costs. It costs thousands and thousands of dollars. Partially because I didn't specify America. And when people started contacting me, literally, countries I've never heard of, I didn't want to turn around and go, oh yeah, this comic book, this gift that I'm sending you, you're going to have to pay, $40 for me to send it out. Which in some countries it was,
I know,
more than that. And so I was committed to my word, which was I'm going to send out free comics to whoever asked. And it just, it was, I literally 3 days ago, I got a thank you Instagram, a DM from somebody for a comic book I sent out in March of last year. So, so I know that there's every once in a while I hear from somebody and they'll say, I didn't get it. And then I'll check on it. And then, a week, 2 weeks later, they'll be like, oh my God, I just got it. So it was very, it was a nightmare, but it was a nice nightmare. So,
well, it was a nice thing that you did. You made a lot of people happy. So,
well, what I've done now, I don't know if people know, I don't know if you know, but I perfected it in the sense that I'm giving away issue 1 through 4 of Ball and Chain on Instagram through a link where you can download the miniseries. So this way, everybody gets their free comic book, but I'm not hiring a staff
Nice.
of 5 to send out comic books all over the world. So,
Well, we're on the subject. Tell us about Ball and Chain.
Ball and Chain is a comic book. What's interesting is, can you get on Instagram right now? Or no, you can't.
I can switch to it, but I can work out if you need me to show something on screen.
Yeah, I mean, if you can take that link that's on there in my bio, that brings you to Ball and Chain. And if you wanted to throw that in the banner or something, that'd be great. And then more people can have access to it,
I'll put it right now in the chat.
Okay.
You can see the chat, right?
No, I don't see the chat. Is there a button here?
On the right side of your screen, go to comments up in the corner, and you can see people that are coming in. Hey, Russell Allen, how are you? Russell will be on this Monday, so come check him out.
Hey, everybody.
Do you see him now?
Yes.
And those are the links from your Instagram.
Kathy was your wife, right?
No, that's my mother.
Hey, mother.
Stephanie was my wife.
Stephanie was your wife who came and picked me up.
Still is. Yes. She is awesome. Thank you.
Okay. So, Ball and Chain is a romantic comedy about a couple that's just about to get a divorce, and then they suddenly get superpowers that only work when they're together. So they have to stay together for the sake of the earth. And
that's pretty cool.
Well, it's funny because unlike your marriage, which is perfect, have conflict in them. So I know you won't think it's funny, but other people may think it's funny. So, but I was fortunate that over the years it had been developed at different studios and different networks, and about 2 years ago now, a producer named Kevin Misher asked if he could take the property and try to set it up, and I said sure. And so I didn't hear much, and one day he calls me in and he says, listen, I have a friend of mine, an actress, that wants to do Ball and Chain as a movie. And I said, oh, that's great. I said, who is it? And he said, it's Emily Blunt. So I'm like, and he goes, and she really wants her best friend to play the husband. And I said, oh, okay, well, who's that? And he's like, Dwayne Johnson. And
really?
Yeah. And so I'm like, I don't need to sit here and listen to this. But I was very, very, very excited. And so very, very, very shortly after that, actually in the midst of the beginning of the pandemic, it wound up selling to Netflix with the phenomenally talented Emily Gordon, who wrote the movie. Oh darn! How embarrassing! I'm blanking now on the movie. She wrote with her husband. Age, don't get old. Whatever you do,
it'll come to you.
Yeah. I should look it up now because otherwise I'm. But anyway,
that was just sold to Netflix this past spring, right?
Yeah, Emily, by the way, is a Academy Award nominated actress. A writer. So that is cool. And what's interesting too about her is that she was a marriage counselor for 15 years before she became a writer.
Oh, so really?
Anyone better to write a movie about a couple? The Big Sick. Sorry. I'm sorry to Emily and to Kamal. That I forgot the name, but it's The Big Sick, which was an excellent. If you haven't seen it, you should. It's an excellent movie. So, so that's at Netflix and it's in development, and everybody's really excited about it. And so we'll see what happens.
I mean, honestly, the concept sounds like it could be a lot of fun and a nice mix of action and comedy, which obviously goes over well with the American public. While we're on the topic of movies, before we get into your comics and everything, in 2017, you had written the screenplay for Happy Death Day, and that went out into theaters. What made you go into screenplay writing and and transitioning from comics?
Well, a few things. One is that that screenplay was written 10 years prior. I originally sold it in 2010, and it took no, I'm sorry, 2007, and it took 10 years to get to the screen, which sometimes seems like a really long time, and other times it's like I was reading that that movie with Will Smith recently where he Gemini Man,
Yeah.
that took 20 years. So
Oh wow.
yeah, so sometimes movies take their time, and even Ball and Chain was 20 years ago, and to think that it bounced around until it wound up with like the biggest star on the planet, the biggest action star on the planet right now, is crazy. And it's like, so it's, time things present themselves when they're ready. So, uh, but what you asked about, about screenwriting. Um, at the very, very, very beginning of my career when I was starting comic books, I always felt that comic books were, and movies were the same thing. It's just a comic book, the movie that you hold in your hand, and it's also uh, doesn't have a budget. With the comic, with even when I started out, the notion of a realistic Spider-Man movie was silly. Like the best you could hope for is a Tarzan thing where some actors
Yeah.
Spider-Man, or him walking on a floor that had windows. Like, oh look, he's walking up the floor. So uh, even the X-Men, when I was writing the X-Men, there was nobody had fantasy that there would be an X-Men movie where you'd have, 8 super. I mean, we were lucky to have Christopher Reeves pull off
Right.
high. The idea that we would have, 8 mutants running around fighting other mutant, it was the stuff of fantasy. And um, so that's what I always was attracted to about comic books is you could do things in comic books that you simply couldn't do in movies. Now there's nothing you can't in a movie that you can't in a comic book.
Just, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Your audio keeps cutting in and out. Do you still have your buds, your earbuds?
But that didn't. Oh, you know what I think it is. Hold on one second.
That's usually what gets rid of the audio issues.
All right. Is it still an issue or not?
Yeah, you're cutting out a lot when you talk, every other word or so.
All right, let me see if I can find all that.
Yeah, when you had your earbuds, you were clear. But yeah, Robert always thought storyboards are just rough comics. I see the similarity too because you're basically scripting the action in each panel, and you're directing what's going on. So I definitely see it as being similar.
Oh,
Absolutely. And hello, Keith. Thanks for coming in. Hello, Greg, or Gregory, if you prefer. How are you?
hey Keith. Hey Greg. Wait, that's in. Let me just get the earbuds going.
Okay, he should be back in a second. He didn't leave yet. We still got him here. Scott was at my show last year. He was very kind to my daughters. My daughters were set up in Artist Alley. They were at their own table in Artist Alley among all the artists, and he came over and he bought art for them, which I didn't even know that until today. So I was very grateful and appreciative of that. My daughters were happy. They actually made a lot of money. And you're back.
Right.
They did. They made a lot of money. My
I
kids.
actually did
Like,
something
wow.
else. I'm going to tell you something else. I shouldn't tell you, but I shouldn't tell you.
Tell me.
I do it. whether it's for your daughters or whether it's for, George Tuska. At one point, it was for Gil Kane. It was for, it's for people creating their own comics and stuff. Is often I will, when people come up to get a comic book signed, I'll say, do me a favor, and I'll hand them like $5, and I'll say, go get a sketch, or I'll, I would, like, George Tuska used to have a book about his sketches and stuff. And I think the book was, I don't know, $30. So people would come up and go, will you do me a favor? And they're like, sure, what? I go, just go over and get this. And I would give them the money to go and buy the books, especially from the older guys who, most people don't remember, your friend who gave me the ride home to,
yeah.
I bought,
Eric.
Yeah, I bought a super boxers from him that he had in his display box.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and I walked over and gave it to Ron Wilson because I knew that, over the years he had lost any copies of super boxers that he had,
Oh, that is awesome.
So I just try to be, a nice. I have a saying that if I always joke that I try to do one good deed a day. And if I do it early enough, I can take the rest of the day off and I can be a jerk. So, but
nice. I like that.
But yeah, so I did send a bunch of people. But having said that, everybody that came back was very, very happy with their drawing. So
that is cool. So Raphael said, I love that. You're a great guy helping people out like that.
I love you, Raphael.
See, we give you nothing but love here, man.
We are the world.
Yeah. So. You got to darken in the glasses.
Yeah. So as far as writing screenplays, like when I got to LA after what was a long run on the X-Men, I had come with Ball and Chain and a handful of properties, and Ball and Chain got set up at Fox the first week I landed, and they were like, okay, well, we're going to get, this writer and that writer, and then I would sell something, they go, oh, we'll get this writer, that writer. And I'd be like, well, can I write it? And they're like, oh, no, you're a comic book writer. And I'm like, are there secret words that comic book writers do not have access to? Is there a safe where
you're like,
they
man,
keep
I
these
wrote off
secret
of a
words?
key. I mean, you wrote X-Men off of a key, like a circle with three facts. So I can do this.
Yeah, and so eventually I realized that the only way they're going to take me seriously is if I wrote something. The term is on spec. With Hollywood, there are two types of assignments. There's a pitch and there's a spec. And a pitch is when you go into a studio and you go, I got a great idea, and you give it to them, and they 99 times out of 100, they go, I don't get it. So what I've discovered for me that works mostly is I like to write. It's called writing on spec, which is short for speculation. I like to write the script and then let it get sent out into the void, and people respond to it because they can see it and they see what the story is and they see who the characters are. And so like Happy Death Day was this script that I wrote on spec, 15, it went to 15 studios. The first 14 said, what is this? It doesn't make any, it's weird. Like, why is she going back in time? Or why is she reliving the day? I don't get it. And my agents would call and go, listen, Scott, the problem is there's no explanation for why she goes back in time. So we're going to have to rewrite it. And I was like, there was no reason why Bill Murray kept reliving the day, Right. Nobody went up to him and, he didn't, the, what do you call it? Gopher?
Yeah. Groundhog.
Groundhog didn't like come out and pee on his leg or something, and he got cursed by groundhog pee. It was just, this was the story, and he figured out he had to be a better person. So they kept saying, "Oh, you're going to have to change it," and I kept saying, "No, I'm not interested in changing it." And then the 15th studio said, "Oh, sure, we'll buy it." And the truth about Hollywood is that, like with Ball and Chain, I think there are 8 studios that were fighting for it. And when I say it, I mean The
That's
Rock.
cool. Yeah.
But having said that, it was you don't need 8. You don't even need 2. You just need 1. And so, I was just talking to a friend last night, a writer, and she was trying to figure out. She got notes from a producer, and she was trying to figure out how to address the notes and blah 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 blah. And in order to address it, she would have to change everything about it. And we were talking, and she had this epiphany, which is something that I've come to realize over the years, is that if the producer doesn't like the story that you've written, that's fine. Find the producer that gets it and gets you,
Right.
Because, the instinct that we all have is like, oh, I must change it. I must change it to sell it. And it's like, there'll be lots of changes once it's sold and once it's cast and once you have a director and you have a budget. I mean, all these things, change everything. And so, but until then, like I'll tell you, Stan Lee, we were working on something at one point, and he goes, Scotty, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you deal with all these notes from people all the time. And I said, Stan, to me, the first draft is art, and every draft after that is commerce. So, when you write a spec, you get to do the story that you want to do. And then once they buy it and they go, oh, can you explain why she relives? Oh yeah, sure, no problem. But until then, it's art. It's just something you created, which, in a lot of ways is what Stan, as the mostly editor of his own material, was able to do, in collaboration with artists and stuff. It's not like, it's not as pure as writing a script, because, with you, it's,
right.
a blank screen, or a sheet of paper that you start with. And, so
what I think is a problem too, though, is they want everything explained. Not everything has to be explained, especially if it's not the key element of what the point of the story is. I mean, even with origins in comic books, I never needed to know Wolverine's origin. He could have stayed a mystery; it would have been fine with me. So, I mean, that's just
I have
me.
to say, have you seen The Boys?
I didn't see the second season yet, but I watched the first season.
Without giving anything away, we meet Butcher's aunt, and then we meet Butcher's mother. And then we meet his father. Then we hear about his dead brother. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, I want Butcher to be a man of mystery, Like, yes, he has Becca, and yes, he found her at the end of the season. And that's a story. But like, it's like, what next season we're going to meet his accountant, who does Butcher's books, like who mows his lawn? Let's get in. I mean, just so you know, I think Boys is an excellent TV show. Right. But as I was watching this season, as they kept peeling back the onion, to your point, I'm like, I'm not interested in, in that.
And sometimes certain characters, mystery works better for them. Not everything has to be told. I mean, honestly, we meet people every day. We don't know half of their background, and they're still interesting people to us. So I don't see the sense to have to flesh out everything to the point where you've stripped all the flesh off. That's just me.
Well, and that's the other thing too. Like, you and I, like you were talking, you said, oh, I didn't know you did comedy, and, beforehand, when you meet somebody, you don't automatically get their whole story. Like, and if you did, it'd be really weird,
and it would be boring because you'd already know everything.
Yeah, to me, Logan was the coolest when he was Logan, and you didn't know if Logan was his first name or his last name. It was like, and then Now he's what, Jamie Hammock or
James
something?
Howlett. James Howlett. Yeah. And that's the thing is they gave you just a little bit to keep you interested in him, and they could have, I don't know, maybe people, I don't know, they have short attention spans. It would have got old for them after a while. But I mean, the story of Origins was written well, but I didn't think it was necessary.
Yeah. Well, so many writers too, like, they want to go for, like I miss secret identities in the worst way in comics. Like everybody had a secret identity. And now everybody knows Tony Stark is Iron Man. Everybody knows Steve Rogers is Captain America. Everybody knows that, there's not even a Donald Blake anymore.
Right.
It was like, like I loved the complications. I loved the, duality of it. I loved, the
Balancing the
fact of
two
like,
worlds.
yeah. And now it is, now it's, so many writers, especially towards the end of the 90s, was like, I'm going to reveal this character's identity to the world. I'm going to reveal this character. And it's like, okay, that's fine if you're a 40-year-old writer and you're looking for, some way to put your thumb on the story.
Right.
But it's, it's, what's the point? Like, I don't, like at one point you're just reading about, everybody else, like, like I don't have a secret identity. You don't have a secret identity, like,
Well,
so
as far
if
as
we're,
you know.
as far as I know, and so like, to me, like I say, that's, I just miss that. So
By the way,
I miss
Chris
that in comics.
Markle, they said, Chris said, I loved your work on the X titles back in the day. Favorite mutant to write? Who was your favorite mutant?
Hey, Chris, my favorite mutant has always been Xavier, because he's the guy that started it all. And, like the idea that he had such a vision and that vision has been enough to inspire people, through the years. Like, I personally believe that the X-Men are never as interesting when Professor X is off the
I agree with you
out of the books,
100%. I agree with you
you know.
100%. I absolutely
So
agree with you. I think one of the things that hurt the X books after you were off the book was what they did with him. And then they started doing stuff with Cyclops. I'm like, you know what? It just, it killed me. But I agree with you.
yeah,
When Xavier's not in the book, it's just not the same.
yeah, and I would say that goes as far back as Chris and every, before Chris, during Chris, after me, and on. Like I admittedly do not read the books now, but when I have had occasion to check them out, like I just, to me, there's no point in having, and like I get the idea you want to dirty up a character a little, like one of my favorite issues to write was the issue with Amelia Vogt where he was younger
Right.
and she wanted to leave and he stopped her in the middle of an argument with his powers very subtly and got her to stay. And it was tragic, and it was a moment in his life when he realized the danger of like using the power for himself, so and that stayed with him for a long time. The idea that he's evil, blah, 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 it's like, enough.
But
We
see,
have
this
the
thing is,
Phoenix. We've already read the Phoenix story. We don't need to Phoenix every character.
exactly. And the truth is, something like that, though, is a very human element. I mean, even the best of us do some of those bad things sometimes. And if you had all that power, yeah, you might slip once in a while and use it inappropriately. That doesn't make him evil. It made him human. That's why that was good. But now, yeah, everything is, like you said, Dark Phoenix. They're going totally evil, and he's made these mistakes, and he's lied, and he's, betrayed
Yeah, and
people, and the dream
the
is
beast
dead.
seems to, yeah, the beast seems to have gotten really raked over the coals as well as a character. And the beast was my entry into maybe even my entry into comics. It was a Avengers 137, I believe, with it was drawn by George Tuska, who we mentioned earlier, and it was the Beast trying to get into the Avengers, and he was such a goofball, and the other characters were like, "Whoa, who is this guy?" And I loved him. I loved him for years, and now it just seems they're trying to make him over as an evil scientist and da 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 da. Da. It's like, ugh.
Have you been reading the new stuff, the Dawn of X
No,
and all that?
I did buy it. I did buy it, and I did read the opening issue of the X. What's it called? House
Dawn
of
of
X, I think it was
X,
called.
House of X, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But I think Jonathan Hickman is a phenomenally talented guy. Unfortunately, when you are with a series, for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, the first issue of Red Hood 51, the first issue of Red Hood that I haven't written in 10 years almost, came out yesterday. I was reading the reviews. But once you've been with a character for so long, pretty much everything else feels like fan fiction.
Right.
I know Chris felt that way. Chris,
Sure.
has said on more than one occasion that he once said, it was a quote in a magazine, I remember, he said, it took me 17 years to build up the X-Men, and then it took him 6 months to gut it like a raw fish.
Yep.
So he hated my X-Men, at least for a while. He and I don't think he talked to me for the first 10 years that I knew him.
Really?
Now we have a fun, respectable relationship. We'll do panels together, and I've interviewed him on panels. And
do you think that part of that was him projecting his anger and frustration with Marvel on you being replaced?
I don't even think it was. I never once took it personally. I don't think he had any anger at me. He may have had anger about, it was funny. We were on a panel once, and I almost had Yukio and Storm kiss in a scene. And to me, it had been established that Yukio was, bisexual at the very least. And when it happened, people got so angry at me, and they're like, "Oh, why? Storm would never kiss a girl." And I'm like, I don't, Storm used to be naked in the swimming pool at, Xavier's, and everybody's like, "Whoa," she walked with like clouds in front of her. I think that Storm is way, way, way more open-minded than, a lot of people. And even if Yukio had kissed her, I don't think Storm would have fried her with a lightning bolt. If she wasn't into it, she'd be like, "Yeah, thank you, but so but I mentioned that in a comic book in a panel I was on, and Chris was like, "Oh, that would never happen." And I said, "Okay." And then he goes, "But you don't know what was in my head, so I could see why, because I didn't put some of these things on paper." I shouldn't do that voice. You should put things on paper. Similarly, I've been with, I've left a book, and as soon as I leave the book, I'll give you an example. I was trying to always change the X-Men every, 20 issues or something, just to mix up the group. And some people I was not allowed to phase in and bring in others. But at one point, I had Iceman and Cecilia Reyes and Sabra and, North Star had just come in on Gene's team. And to me, the X-Men were always about change. So you should always be changing out the roster, having characters come in and out. And I got the issue that I left after 7 years, Kitty's back, Colossus is back, Nightcrawler's back, we're all back, everybody's back. And it's like, that's great. We saw them all, 25 year in 1970, '76 and '77. Like, like I don't need to travel back 25 years in time to enjoy something, Like,
So,
so
do you think what's hurting? I don't know if you even think comics are hurting today, but do you think that the constant rotation of artists every 6 to 12 issues is hurting the continuity and the writing of the characters? Because the writer comes in with their own visions, their own thoughts of how the characters behave. But whereas, when Claremont wrote for 17 years, it was natural development for them. When you wrote for 7 years, you had time to naturally have people develop and change over time. But now you've got them, a writer has them for 12 issues, and then it's another writer, and then it's another writer. Do you think that's been hurting the industry?
it's funny because when I started reading comic books, I don't, like I would have an experience where I would read a book, I'd read an issue of Marvel Team Up. I'd be like, oh my God, I love this. Who did, let me go back. Oh, Bill Mantlo. I love Bill Mantlo. But, I didn't seek out Bill Mantlo comics. I liked Marvel Team Up, and some issues I liked and some issues I didn't. Like Chris and John's run on Marvel Team Up was amazing. Everything Sal Buscema did, I loved. But, so I may have a different experience with reading stories, and like maybe it is completely more character driven or da 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 da, like with in the 10 years that I wrote Red Hood, you could really see, I mean, like if you looked at the trade paperbacks, you could see like wild shifts from grounded stories to suddenly they're in space to suddenly they're in hell to to back to grounded to and I felt that a comic book should have that freedom to go places. So I don't think that it's a bad thing for like a perfect example, the kid that just did this 2-issue run on Red Hood. It's a very, 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 very grounded story. And it's not at all the, the gonzo stuff that I was doing, with the Outlaws. Specifically, in part because to me, the Outlaws wasn't just the name of the team. The book itself was, in my mind, designed to be outlaw-esque. Like if you picked up an issue of Outlaws, yeah, you would love the characters, but you shouldn't know what's going to happen. You shouldn't know if you're going to be in space or if you're going to be, in another reality or,
So you wanted the reader on the seat of their pants, by the seat of their pants when they're reading this.
And yeah, but I'm sure that there are people that hated that. And I'm sure that there are people that read issue 51 and were like, oh, thank God Jason's back. This is what I want in a Jason. And that's fine. Like there's absolutely no harm and no foul to it. So I don't know that, like, I mean, in a way, I think that comic books would be stronger. Jim Lee told me at the beginning, it's kind of an interesting experiment. It didn't, I don't think it ever manifested, but he had a theory that no creative team should be on a book for more than a year.
Really?
Like we should, the way to keep the characters fresh was by bringing in, you get on, you tell your story, and then, you go on to the net. I start out with Teen Titans. I have 12 issues to tell my origin of Teen Titans story, and then someone else comes on.
I'm surprised by that, especially with him and Claremont on the X-Men. I'm surprised that he has that philosophy.
I don't know. They did not. They were like peanut butter and snails. I mean, they were not like that. That was not good.
But they were successful for a long period of time, though.
It wasn't. I don't think it was that long, was it? But I also, it's not my place to say this, but like Chris would sometimes ask for infinitely more than an artist could draw in the whole book on a single page.
Okay.
And Jim was the first guy to go, you know what, I'll do this scene and I'll do this scene and I'll do this scene, and everything else goes out the window. And Chris was mortified, but you think you can look at that run and see where a lot of it was, it didn't go in as many different directions as it had up until that point, and so they were not a happy. That was not a good mix. So,
Cameron and Byrne weren't either.
No, and I love so many of the people that I worked with. Sometimes I didn't. Sometimes we started out. John Romita Jr. and I were not friends and not friendly at all when he first started, and now we're like, I wouldn't say we're Gambinos, but we're close, and we love hanging out at conventions and stuff. But so sometimes you got to find your way with an artist. But I think what happened too is that you look at Brett and I on. There's one theory which is get in, tell your story, bring in somebody else. Make the characters important. Don't make the writer important, the artist as important. Make the character important and the story important. But then suddenly you're having, Snyder and Capullo on Batman, and do you go, you know what? 12 issues is enough. You guys hit the road. No. Brett and I were still doing very well in sales for a really long time on Teen Titans. So if you're looking at the boards and you go, it's time to make some changes. Let's get rid of this successful team. Let's get rid of that. That doesn't happen. So, so then it kind of went by the wayside. But I don't know that it's the worst experiment in the world. We don't. When you read comic books nowadays, you don't get a what's the word? I'm always surprised by how often X books are canceled. Like the idea of the old days of an X book being, we had Excalibur, but the idea that you'd have a book and it doesn't get to 6 issues, it doesn't get to 12 issues. That's like So I understand that it's really hard in today's marketplace to keep even an X book going. And that's why people will say things like, oh, they're just canceling it so they can get a new #1. And it's like, it's only partial. It's partially the story. The other part of the story is no one's reading it. So you have to relaunch it. No, none of these books are like selling through the roof. And you go, we need to cancel this book and bring in another book. It's like the audience is not there. I will tell you a funny story. When Dan Didio has told me this several times, and I think it's because he forgot. I don't think he's being mean. I think he just forgot that he told me. Mm-hmm. But he often will say that when the New 52 started, he had a bet that Redhood and the Outlaws was going to be the first book canceled. He said it wouldn't make it to 6 issues. So 10 years later, but so it's just kind of interesting. It's like, like that, there's no reason why, maybe the reason is 100% because people love Jason, and maybe anybody could have written the book for 10 years. I'm sure there are people watching this right now going, what do you do?
I love your impersonations, by the way.
But the thing is that why did I bring that up? I brought it up because, because a 10-year run is pretty, it's pretty unheard of.
So did you send that email to Dan going, na 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 na?
No, but I think we've joked about it since, but But, and I'm not, I'm just saying, like, I mean, each time the book was canceled, it was canceled to put Red Hood Arsenal in its place, and it was canceled again to put Red Hood and the Outlaws in its place. And, that was the market that we were in at the time. I don't know what it sells now. I'm assuming it doesn't sell very well, but I don't think much sells very well right now. But
not much, especially with DC, unfortunately.
Yeah, are they? Do you have a store or no?
Me, no. I just run the shows. But the DC is going to be canceling. I mean, I think they said 20% of their titles, but now I'm hearing it maybe more. I have no idea. I don't think anybody knows.
Well, I mean, honestly, I've said for years, if I was in charge of DC or Marvel, like, we live in this world from 60 years ago where Marvel and DC, like, they had to compete and they had to be number one. It's a you're number one, you're number one, no, I'm number one, you're number one, no, I'm number one. And it's like, really, they're both owned by conglomerates that if I were in charge, I would put out 10 books a month, with 2 editors, and get the best writers and the best artists and make that entertaining. Like, we don't need, we don't need, there's so many comic books that we don't need, and when I say we don't need them, I think that the audience doesn't need them because they're not reading them. So,
Right.
like, and I'm not saying you shouldn't have, like, to me, it's weird. My gateway drug into the Marvel Universe was Marvel Team Up and Marvel 2-in-1. I love Marvel Team Up and I love Marvel 2-in-1 because suddenly, like, Nighthawk would be there. I'm like, Nighthawk? Who the hell is Nighthawk? Well, he's a defender. Defenders, what the hell is this? And then I remember it was the mid 90s and they had canceled Marvel Team Up. And I was like, why did you cancel Marvel Team Up? And they go, well, it doesn't really make sense that, Spider-Man's a loner. So the likelihood of him meeting all these people like once a month, they really didn't. And I'm like, nobody cares about that. Like, nobody, if somebody didn't read it because of that, that's fine. They're not reading it. But for the people that were reading it, and there were a lot of people reading it, and it, to me, I'm sure it manifests itself into other, avenues. I guess I'm straying here, but I guess what I would say is, even if I was doing 10 books a month, I would do a DC Universe book. I would do a Marvel Universe book where you could explore, other corners of those universes. But, this notion, I mean, how many times you look at a book and you're like, who is this book for? Like, who's reading this?
Right.
So,
that's true. Going back to Secret Identities real quick, though, Raphael, who's a writer, he asked you, so do you think they got rid of Secret Identities because it's easier to write without having to worry about the secret identity and all that goes with that?
I don't know that it's lazy. I think it's, it's a function of what I was saying before. Like, I mean, I don't want to name names because that's rude, but I've just seen people, like, come up with things that they think are astounding. Like, I've revealed my identity to the world, and it's like, okay, good, you got to do that issue. That's exciting for you as a writer that you got to do that. But now, what about the 50 other writers who were who want to still be able to have the freedom to tell that story? Naturally, I mean, certainly I was not guilty, but in when I was hired to do New 52, I was hired specifically to recreate and reimagine characters. So that, but that was the job. That wasn't me just, coming in and going, hey, let's get rid of the Teen Titans as we know them. But having said that, I just think it's like, like, you want to, when somebody comes on to a book, everybody wants to tell the story where Aunt May dies, and editors used to be like, we're not killing Aunt May, everybody wants to kill Alfred, Scott took his hand, and Tom killed Alfred. And it's like, like there's so many stories that when you get on the book, you want to tell that story. And it's like, what? Some stories I don't think need to be told. I don't think you need to, I don't think a character becomes inherently more interesting because they have a secret identity or that they don't have a secret identity, Like, I guess if if a character like, say, Daredevil revealed himself and the next issue somebody killed Karen and Foggy and, everybody that was on the Defenders when he was in the team, and you go, oh my God, that is the worst thing that could possibly, I've kept a secret identity for years. It's exposed. Now everybody I know is dead. That really proves the point. Then I'd say, okay, well that, you always have an avenue to tell other stories, no matter what, the writer before you has done. So I think that there are things you can do, but I think too often it seems to me that people, just want to get that wow factor for that issue.
Right.
And then they're off to another book or they're off to, I mean, I don't know. I don't have a secret identity, but if I did, I would imagine that, not having a secret identity would certainly have an impact on my life,
Right.
I don't know. But to answer your question, I don't think it's lazy. I wouldn't say it's lazy. But it's also, it's like what I was saying before about, Spider-Man wouldn't be with these other people. It's like, we get to this point where we're just trying, like you were saying before about explaining everything. It's like we want to explain. Like I often say that I miss the days when Superman would fly into the Batcave and he'd be like, Batman, there's been a murder on Mars. We have to solve it. And Batman's like, let me put on my fishbowl helmet, still in this costume. And Superman's like, come on. And they fly to Mars and they solve a crime. And it's like, that was fine. I love those stories. That was totally fine. That was, one story was Batman beating up a bank robber,
Right.
In Brave and Bold, he's, on a fishbowl in Mars solving a crime. And it's like, we get to this thing where we just have to explain. And people will be like, well, it really doesn't make sense that he wears glasses and Superman does. And it's like, it's fine. It's a comic book.
Well, what makes me laugh is, first of all, they're trying to ground everything in reality now, which, how can you really do that when they're the Hulk and Superman, etc.? But where they'll nitpick, that doesn't make sense. How can Batman just wear a fishbowl and go to Mars? Well, I don't know. How is Superman an alien that's flying him to Mars? So it's funny how people pick and choose what their reality is, what's an acceptable fiction and what's not. By the way, just to clarify, what I meant by Jim Lee and Claremont is not that they had a long run together, but it was longer than the 6 issues that you're seeing, or that, people together now, is all I meant. We had a few questions too. Keith, by the way, said that he loved your work with Onslaught and he loves your X books. And Robert asked, what character did you not like writing?
You know what? Honestly, it's the strangest experience. I was going to bring in Harley for an arc. And halfway through the first issue, I'm like, oh my God, she is so boring. Like, I just had her, I think if I didn't have her leave at the end of that issue, I had her leave at the next issue. There's just, I just did not connect with Harley at all,
Her and Deadpool have been just killing me.
Killing you in terms of?
They're just oversaturated.
In a good way?
They're oversaturated. I don't find them entertaining. Just me. It's just me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just, I thought it'd be interesting to explore, Jason is as much Joker's son as he is Batman's, because he essentially, changed the whole trajectory of his life. And, in that way, Harley was was sort of his stepmom. And this notion that Harley in her heart was a psychologist who wants to help, but is also an agent of chaos. and could she reach to Jason and they could connect in a way that no other characters in the DC universe could connect in that specific way. I thought it was really, really fascinating. But as soon as I started writing her, I was like, wow, this is not for me. And so I wrote her out pretty quick. But so to answer your question, surprisingly, it was Harley. So.
And Keith wants to know, which characters were you not allowed to use in the stories that you did, and I'll add to that, which characters were they that you wanted to? I mean, that you would really, that your favorites that you wanted to.
I can't think of an instant where I wanted to bring somebody in, but was not allowed to. I really, it was more a matter of, like, I would want to, it was more a matter of that I wasn't allowed to have people leave, like sometimes I was allowed, like I was able to lose Forge. And Forge was an interesting case because, like it was one of the very first things I did on the book. And, it was like, oh, Storm and Forge, they're life mates, they're soulmates, they're soulmates, they're life mates, they're life mates, they're soulmates. They'd had like, I don't know, like 6 panels worth of dialogue in the last, I don't know, 6 years before I got, and I'm like, like, let's have them, let's focus on Storm. And, if she's not his, I don't know, maybe it was the wrong choice. Maybe it was the right choice. I don't know. But so I could phase people out, but I was never allowed to get rid of Storm. I was never allowed to get rid of Wolverine.
Probably.
Yeah, but other than that, I was, you have to remember that this was 25 years ago. So do you remember who your best friend was 25 years ago?
I didn't have one.
Oh, that is the saddest story.
I was the loner like Peter Parker. I couldn't be in a team up.
This is a next time we do a panel, we're going to get to the, next time we do one of these, we'll get to the bottom of that. But, so yeah, no, I don't think there was, anybody that I wasn't allowed to bring in, at least on the X-Men. And, I will say, I mean, certainly on Red Hood, I really wanted Rose on the team full time. I really wanted Man-Bat, because I think Man-Bat is like the coolest character, and I think he'd slip right into the whatever universe, the Outlaw universe.
Yeah.
And anybody who read the book for any length of time knows that I have a huge crush on Creeper. And, like when I was at DC, there were so many times I'm like, let me have Creeper, let me do like a mini series. And they're like, oh no, he's too silly. And I'm like, well, let me make him unsilly. Let me make him cool. Let me, but I could never. So I was able to sneak him into like an annual or something, but I was never allowed to, really dig into the character.
See, I'd love for them to take some of these characters that have become obscure and just kind of like Jeff Johns did with Aquaman, just write them well, turn them around, and make them relevant again. And something like that with Creeper would be awesome. There's Ted Kord's Blue Beetle, there's the Creeper, there's a lot of guys that they could take out of the bullpen and really write well.
Yeah, like I wanted Man-Bat to. I even did a cover. It was Man-Bat, Agent of Shade. Where he's like, he's a smart, handsome scientist who, when he needs to, turns into this, horrific creature of the night. It's like, oh my God, like, a dark version of James Bond. I thought, oh my God, like, have we seen that? Like, I think it'd be so awesome. But, so yeah, so to answer that question.
Keith wanted to know how it was working on the Age of Apocalypse with Joe Mad.
Joe was the best. We had a dinner. I'm not a dinner. All went to a diner when we were talking. And the Cuberts were there, and Fabian was there, and I was there, and Joe Mad was there. I think Larry Hama was there. A lot of people were there, and we were talking. We're going, okay, so which characters do you want? And Fabian's like, I want, Gambit. I want he wanted all the characters that were like the coolest characters, and I was like, I want Sunfire. And everybody's like, I go, yeah, no, wait, Sunfire, where like when he used his powers, he just burnt off his entire, he burnt this flesh from his body. And, he has to wear a mask with like the Japanese symbol on it. And everybody's like, okay. And Joe's like, and I'm like, and I said, and I want to use Sabretooth and Wild Child. And they're like, well, isn't that redundant? Right. I said, no, because Sabretooth is really cool. And he's going to keep Wild Child on a chain on his wrist and unleash him when he needs like complete pandemonium. And then when he's done, he'll like whack Wild Child's head on the pavement and chain him back up and throw him over his shoulder. And they're like, what? And Joe Mad's like, oh my God. So it was like, so he was so right on there, with me. And I do think that once those character sketches start coming in, people were like, oh, this gives me the ability to,
sure,
take off Wolverine's hand and, make Cyclops an actual Cyclops. So I think that was really, really helpful. But Joe, if people follow my writing, which I don't expect them to, but, Bob used to call it what do you call it? I forget what it was called. The idea is there's always a lot, Chris had always built in a lot of, Caption-O-Matic, he'd call it. The Caption-O-Matic 500. Like Chris used a lot of captions. And when I took over, it was incumbent upon me to keep what people liked about the X-Men and, and there's this whole theory about captions and everything that we could talk about. But when I started working with Joe, people will start to notice that I stopped using captions and I stopped using thought balloons because everything was right there on the page. It was just like, I would get this work and I'd be like, I don't want I don't need, there's his face. I don't need it, I don't need it, And so that really, it's funny because when I went into New 52, people were complaining because I was using captions and I was using thought balloons and be like, wait a minute, you can't use thought balloons. That's so retro. Lobdell doesn't know how to write modern comic. And it's like 20 years before that, I was writing Wildcats X-Men crossover with Travis. Yeah. And zero captions, zero captions, zero thought. And when I started, I was like, this feels like a movie. And at the time, movies traditionally did not have flashbacks. They traditionally did not have voiceovers. For years, if you would try to do a voiceover, people would, it was like subtitles. But working with Travis, I was like, it doesn't need it. It's like watching a movie. It should feel like you're watching a movie. It should feel like what you get isn't, people's thought balloons thinking about, I wish I had done that. We should just get what we see on the screen. And so I was doing, no thought balloons, no captions when, the kids these days were just, some of the writers these days were, reading comic books in high school, or middle school. Right. And I was doing it back then. So what people didn't understand was that was A, a choice, and B, it was a choice that I was asked to make,
they said, listen, Scott, all 52 books are doing the same first-person narration. Can you do it differently? And I said, well, I can do thought balloons. And I'm like, okay, do thought balloons. And if you're going to do captions, do third-person omnipresent instead of, I am Robin and my name is Robin and I wear a Robin costume. Like everybody was doing it. And so I did that way. And, because the internet is the internet, everybody's like, oh, he's old. He can't write. He doesn't understand words anymore. But they didn't understand that. That's what I was asked to do. So,
By the way, Norm Ratman is here to give me the love that he usually sends me. Phil still has no friends. This is the love I get from Norm. Do you see it every show?
I'll just say there's a reason he's an inker and not a writer. That's all I'm saying. Okay.
Ooh,
just saying.
Scott's got my back.
Is Norm on is Norm on Instagram or no? I don't know.
Yeah, he is.
Hey, Norm,
I think it's called Squizzler Muncher or something like that.
Norm, why don't you post all 300 pictures of us that you've taken over the years? Maybe just pick out the 10 best and put them on Instagram and tag me at Scotty Lobdell with a Y, not IE, with a Y. Okay. Is he responding? Let's see. I can't even see all these chats, but
give him a minute. If he's still on, he'll respond.
Of course he's still on. What does he have to do? What does he?
This is great.
What could Norm Ratman be doing on a Friday night?
This is awesome. Somebody comes to my defense when Norm comes after me. This is great. Keith is coming out with some great questions here, too. He wanted to know if you wanted it to be Xavier that was the ex-traitor, or did you want somebody else?
I did not want Xavier because I felt that Xavier was one of the most obvious choices. So I had a huge, it's maybe the only fight that I ever had with Bob in the entire years that I've known him. He really wanted to, Mark was on the book for about 5 minutes, and he was really wanting to be involved with, to get Mark to, put out his ideas. And so he sided with Mark, but it wasn't my choice. So the picks will.
There'll be a surprise for you when we're 100, if you make it that long.
Oddly enough, I will still look like this, and Norm will look like a 100-year-old man.
I wonder if he'll let that I think he trimmed it off, but I'd like to see that Gandalf beard grow again that he's been doing.
Oh, did he have a Gandalf? Oh, you mean when he was a rock star or no?
No, in this past 8 months, he grew it. He was growing it out, and it was starting to come out. He was looking like a wise older man. Yeah, go look at the pics. I think food started getting caught in it, so he had to shave it off. By the way, Keith,
did you ever see his rock star photos?
Yes. Well, he looked like Yanni to me.
That's probably what he plays. I think of Zamfir.
That's great.
So, Keith, I will tell you this story very quickly. Is that we were going to do Heroes Reborn. I pitched this idea for a story where I wanted Juggernaut to sail through the sky and bam, hit the X-Men's front yard and skid 300 yards and slam into a tree, and they all run up there like, oh my God, what happened? And Juggernaut says, onslaught, and passes out. And I'm like, that'd be so cool. And they're like, that's so cool. Who's onslaught? I have no idea. I just think it just would be so cool to see that. Who could beat up Juggernaut? So then 2 months later, Bob comes up and he says, listen, one of the editors says you can't do that. You can't just have Juggernaut beat up. You have to explain who Onslaught is. And I said, no. I said, I'm not I don't know who Onslaught is. Zero interest in who Onslaught is. So I was in the middle of another storyline, blah, blah. So he's like, okay. So Adventure Heroes Reborn started, and they said, okay, we have to figure out a way to separate, the Avengers and Captain America and the X-Men and put them in a different reality so we can do Heroes Reborn. And it's like, oh, and so we were going through the list of super villains, and we said, okay, well, it's not Apocalypse. We just did Age of Apocalypse. Magneto doesn't have that kind of power. Doc Octopus doesn't. Thanos isn't going to do that. And so one day I'm like, oh my God, Onslaught can do that. And they're like, how do you know that? I go, because he beat up the Juggernaut the first time we saw him. Like, he is a strong guy. And so as we started to figure out who Onslaught was, we realized that, when Xavier turned off Magneto's mind, I don't know, a year or 2 years before that, he didn't turn it off. He took it into him. And that started this corruption of his mind through Magneto being in it. I mean, imagine having the most powerful mind in the world. Magneto's in it, screwing you over. And then we're like, okay, that's all makes sense. That, you take the two most powerful mutants in the world and you put them together, it would be an onslaught. Like, how could you stand against that kind of power? And then the beauty of it was, this was 6 months after the pitch, maybe a little longer, of that Juggernaut story. If Xavier was being wanted to lash out at somebody, who's the one most personal person he would lash out at?
Stepbrother, right?
Yeah, the one who tortured him as a youth and beat him up and all that. So it's like, so then it's like, by going back and picking up the breadcrumbs, we were able to create Onslaught. But if you're looking at it, you go, oh yeah, well, when Juggernaut shows up, he says Onslaught, so it must be blah blah. But it was totally reverse engineered, which I always thought was really fun, So.
Who did you want to be the X-Traitor, though, if you didn't want it to be Xavier?
I don't remember. I don't remember. So, but you know what? Honestly, I think it was like one of those. It was one of those things we talked about with Logan and stuff. Like, I think I would have been okay to this day not knowing who I don't. There are some things like Days of Future Past. Like, I love Days of Future Past. I don't know if they've ever resolved it. I don't know if they ever like staged a rebellion and they overthrew everybody, blah blah blah. But like when we were doing Ascani Sun, which was set in the future, like you could refer to, there's a gap that you could refer to the XSE and you could refer to Days of Future Past. And I'm happy with that. I think like, you have those.
I agree.
Yeah, those, what do you call them? Toys that are on the shelf. And, a writer should be able to take a toy down and go, whatever, blah, blah. So I think it would have been, I would have been fine misdirecting the Traitor for years and telling other stories and, maybe, so, I don't know. But,
by the way,
but
Keith,
I really,
sorry, go ahead.
No.
Keith had mentioned, and I agree with him, that we'd love to see a new Alpha Flight title with the original team and have you write it. I think that would be awesome. That would be fun.
That's it. That's interesting because I loved doing my version of Alpha Flight, but I think I was the only one. But it was fun. So. No,
Keith and I are big Alpha Flight fans. We loved it. We loved Alpha Flight. We want to see it come back, but I actually enjoyed your run. So guys, go ahead.
Yeah, it was a fun. No, the thing is like I don't, certainly Marvel and DC, like no one is pounding on my door asking me to, keep writing. I have a bunch of creator-owned stuff that I've been working on for the last, I don't know, 6 months. I'm really, really, really loving it. I don't. Honestly, like I live at the beach now, across the street from the beach, and every morning I get up, and every morning I'm so happy I'm not writing corporate comics anymore.
I'm hearing that a lot. I'm hearing that a lot.
Yeah, I don't. Fabian called me up a few weeks ago, and he's like, I want to tell you something, but you're going to get upset. I was like, what's that? It's like, well, they asked me to do this Legends thing where, X-Men writers get to write stories from the past and put them into continuity. And he knew that they hadn't asked me, nor would they ask me. And I'm
Why?
like, I am not sad. I think that I think most of it has to do with I, more than anybody else, I think am associated with, the 90s as a writer. And I think that not everybody there are still people there that are really have staked their reputation on, they came in and fixed it. They fixed Marvel, Marvel is doing crossovers. Meanwhile, like, how many times have they gone back to Age of Apocalypse? How many times have they tried to do something like Age of Apocalypse? It's like,
Keep regurgitating
it's fine.
stuff.
Everybody, it's all, and it's all fixed now. So that's good. Everything's great. They don't need me. So
it always amazes me, the stigma that's on the 90s. Meanwhile, the 90s, was successful. I mean, obviously you had your implosion, but you had the best art. You had some great writing. It was entertaining. It was fun. And yet this stigma on the 90s, and even the pencils now, I mean, except for like David Finch is still doing books regularly, but I always find it weird, like people scoff at the 90s like it's this embarrassment. It wasn't an embarrassment at all. It actually brought in a lot of new readers.
I mean, remember Wednesdays used to be, I mean, you can't say it anymore with the pandemic, but Wednesdays used to be like this amazing, like everybody was in the store on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Everybody. Like you.
It was a holiday every week.
Every Wednesday, people would show up to the comic book stores. And then I remember before, like, a few years before New 52 launched, you go in and it's just, you're like zombies. You're like, oh, what's on the stands? Okay. All right, see ya. And the store owner would be like, okay, bye. Thanks for coming. It was like, and so you can say speculators, you can say what you want, but there was an enthusiasm,
sure,
and an excitement and love and community that is, I mean, now we have message boards and God bless America, but it's, I will say something that I think was very funny is that I watched The Gifted, the first 10 minutes of it when it came out. I was like, okay, let me see what they do with it. With the idea. Was that?
Yeah, I couldn't stay with that show, but I watched a few episodes.
Well, what cracked me up is that in the opening scene of Gifted, Blink is being tracked down by the bad guys.
Yeah.
And she finally winds up in under a bridge, and then she uses her power and she blinks away. And I'm watching, and then they cut to a commercial, and the commercial was for Happy Death Day that was about to be released in 3 weeks later or something.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, well, I'm so irrelevant, that 25 years after creating Blink, my movie is released and it's the #1 movie in America for that week that it was released. So it's like, people can carry on all they want about how, it's nonsense. I don't, it goes in 1 year and so.
Man, I was hoping to get another.
But it cracks me up. I mean, could you imagine having that? Could you imagine having that experience though? To be like, like this character that you created, cut to the commercial, and then all of a sudden, the movie. I was like, okay, bazinga. So.
Drop the mic. Yeah, bazinga. Nice, nice reference. Drop the mic. Is there a book that you wanted to work on for Marvel or DC that you never got to?
Legion of Superheroes, I would always love to do. And I'd also love to do Wonder Woman, because I think every permutation of Wonder Woman, I think gets it wrong.
They both fit your wheelhouse, though, because you can use both of those books to go into space or do Greek mythology or to travel in time. So going back to what you were saying before, both of those titles would fit your wheelhouse really well with doing, the grounded and the crazy and just going to all these different places. I could see that.
Yeah, and then with Wonder Woman, to me, the reason she wears that red, white, and blue costume isn't because it was like lying around in Amazon Island. Like, why the heck they would have, an American Eagle and,
Right.
Star Spangled Pants lying around. Oh, here, I'm going to wear these Star Spangled Pants. To me, she, like every time we see Wonder Woman, it's like, I'm going to come and fix man's world. Women are, this is how it's done. I'm going to fix man's world. It's like, I think that she looks at America as like the most amazing place on earth because it has so many cultures. And she grew up in essentially a completely homogenized world of women, like of just one sex. And not that, I'm not talking about sex with the capital or the verb sex, but the idea is that to me, she stayed here because she loves America and she loves the experience of America. This always this constant like, oh, she's, the Greek gods and she wants to fix the world. And it's like, to me, she's like a cool female version of Captain America, except that she chose us.
Right.
Captain America took the job that was offered, but Wonder Woman was like, no, this is the most amazing place in the world, and I'm going to fight for it. I'm going to fight for people, and I'm going to, make the world a better place. And so, to me, I think like Wonder Woman is like the quintessential immigrant experience coming from someplace else. Even Clark landed here. I guess he could always leave if he wants, but so to me, I think Wonder Woman is such a amazing character, and when they just try to define her, as this, I don't know, this Scottish Terrier on the Monopoly board, like, oh, this is who she is. Da, 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 da. That doesn't, and they do it again and again and again, and it's like, how is that not obvious? So
Raphael says he loves what you're saying about Wonder Woman. It makes total sense. By the way, Chris,
Thank you,
just to go
Raphael.
back, Chris Matter is an excellent artist. He said he'd love to see some creator-owned content from you. I think we all would. I'd absolutely love to see it.
Oh my God, I have so much of it, and it's coming. Yeah, so much of it is coming, and
Are you hooking up with artists? Do you need artists?
I do need artists. I also I'm doing a series with Brett, which is going to be awesome. And I have I'm working with artists from Brazil, from Mexico, guys I haven't worked with for years. Some guys that I do a lot of training of artists, like, I'll go over layouts first, which is something I don't usually do, but I'll say, well, think about this and da, 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 da. And so, but yeah, no, I'm going to have, I won't say it's a glut. In fact, this kind of interesting thing is that I have about 6 books, and rather than go on Kickstarter and do a book, I was thinking about going on Kickstarter and saying, if you pledge X, you can get 1 book. If you pledge XX, you can get 3 books. If you pledge, blah, 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 which I think could kind of be an interesting way to do it,
Oh, it'd be different. So. And why not be a trendsetter? You could, offer a larger tier where you get all 6 different titles. That'd be cool. That'd be really good.
And then this way they can, but also what I'm trying to do too is I want to, people have been asking me like, okay, who's going to publish this book? And I said, well, maybe I'll publish it. I don't know. But the thing is that I'm not going to put out anything until I have, the 3 issues of something, because I don't want, I don't want to slip into that, Oh, and all the stuff I'm doing has been 26 pages because, I don't have to run ads, and I want the book to feel like you're getting more for
your dollar,
for your buck. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Well,
and while it won't be a,
what's that?
I was just say it won't be $1. It won't be $1, but it will be cheaper than other comic books because I think one of the biggest dirty secrets of comic books is that they charge $5 because that's what they charge. It's not like
But just remember to add shipping, Scott. Make them pay for shipping.
Yes, add shipping. No, from now on, all shipping is on. It's on you. So.
Hey, when you get those projects going, you can of course come back at any time. We'll talk about them, promote them, pitch them.
We'll go back and.
Yeah. So a question, maybe this is putting you on the spot. What were the contrasts and the comparisons writing for Marvel and for DC, and did you prefer one publisher over the other?
Well, I mean, when I was writing the X-Men, I was at the top of the heap, so I was able to, push things through, and I don't know if you know Jim Mahfood, the artist.
Yes,
like
of course.
I met Jim in I believe it was St. Louis, and I was stunned by what he had done with Girl Scouts. And I went back and I said, hey, we got to do this as like a Gen X special. And they're like, okay, well, we have to see what his stuff looks like colored. I go, no, I'm not saying like get him to do a comic book. I'm saying do this, do something different and cool. And they did. They printed it on that, wacky paper, and they used,
Right.
I believe it was a 3-color scheme. And it's funny, one time I went into, one of the things I didn't get to do, which always makes me laugh, is I said, what I really want to do? I want to do an original Treasury size edition X-Men book, like make it like this really cool story, make it so big that it can't fit into a regular comic book.
That's
and they're
cool.
like, okay. But they said, no, because retailers will hate it because they can't rack it, so no one will order it.
Tell that to everybody in the '80s.
And
We
I'm
got the
like,
New Mutants graphic novel, and the a man
right.
kills God. God loves, man kills. Stop it! They don't know. What
those were book sizes. I want to do the Treasury.
No, the graphic novels, the original
Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, the original God Loves, Man Kills from X-Men was a larger graphic novel. Remember they did, and then the New Mutants, the first one, was a larger graphic novel. Those were big books. They weren't thick, but they were much bigger than 8.5 by 11.
They were bigger because they were like book size, but the Treasury size editions were those, Spider-Man meets Superman.
But what I'm saying is those worked. So the size excuse that they're giving is a bad excuse, because if those graphic novels were successful,
so what I said to them was, I went back and I said, let me ask you a question. If you said we're going to release these books, but only in like, Golden Apple in LA and Forbidden Planet in New York, what would happen? They go, oh my God, everybody would want those books. Everybody would be ordering those books. You can't just do that. Everybody would demand those books. I'm like, okay, so let's do that then. And then, they'll figure out how to, at the time, Marvel could easily do a display of their own at the cash register selling these oversized books if they want it. Nothing's impossible. But so back then I was always able to change things and put out ideas. And, like with Generation X, they came to me and they said, we want to redo New Mutants. And I said, okay. And I went, and that weekend, I was like, well, I don't want Charles. I don't want her. What about Banshee? And then what about her? And maybe it's at the Massachusetts Academy. Maybe it's not even at the. So the more I got done, by Monday I came in. I said, I want it to be Generation X. I don't want to do Mutants. I want to do Generation X. And they were like, oh. And so those were the type of things that I could do. I liked introducing new characters, blah, blah, blah. When I started on Teen Titans, I missed the days of like when Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, all these characters, like their first 12 issues were new character, new world, new idea, new, and over the years it's become, oh, a limousine just drove up and Steve Rogers his life is being harassed. I wonder who's in the limousine. I roll down the limousine and oh my God, it's a Red Skull. It's like, Spider-Man is gonna, swing into his college lab and here's your new teacher. Oh my God, it's Otto Octavius. I did not see that coming. It's like, so to me, I like the idea of like, of those days of, new idea. And then you can start to develop those ideas. When I launched New 52, everybody was doing these like 6-episode arcs where it's like, I'm going to open this door. What happens next issue? I'm going to turn on the light. Okay, what's next issue? It's like, oh my God, like what is happening? I guess I hadn't been around comic books to know that, we were supposed to not tell stories, in single issues. And so I was like, if you look at the first issues of Teen Titans and Superboy, and even when I was starting to do Superman, and I remember we were at a conference and Dan was talking to some writers, and I came over and he was saying, well, you need to do, and I said, oh, hey, and he goes, oh, and you have too many ideas. They're all over the place. And I was like, oh, like like when I was writing X-Men, people would always say to me, you ever afraid you're going to run out of ideas? And I would say, no, I'm afraid every issue that I do not have enough room in every issue to get everything that I want in to tell, as a story. But I realized fairly early on in the New 52 that I had come of an age where, you want a cliffhanger. You want that moment when you come back from an issue to be like, okay, this is what's happened. These are who we are. Let's go to this. And people would get so mad. I'd be like, I mentioned Superboy was a clone. We know he's a clone. Why do we have to keep reading he's a clone? It's like, it's a caption, relax, but it was, so I learned very quickly that in today's comic books, we don't live in a world where you want, well, I shouldn't say that. Publishers don't want you to and maybe even editors don't have the wherewithal to, ride out a story, they just, or they just want, the 6 issues and they want it to end and they want to be able to set it aside as a trade and da 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 da, and that's it's fine. That's
and that's the thing, they do write for trade paperbacks. They do write for the trade paperbacks at this point in a lot of cases. But
like if you look at if somebody took the first 12 issues of Superman and Red Hood and Superboy and Teen Titans, I think they'd be like, holy, how many ideas are here? But that's just not what people want. So
you needed a 17-year run. That's what you needed.
I did. And also, like, I will have to say that the best part about this creator-owned stuff is, like, I wake up if I want to, I'm not on a deadline. The work will get done. When it gets done, it'll get published. And for better or for worse, it'll be what I think the audience wants to see. And we'll see.
Now, will you have someone be an editor for you, or are you just going to edit it yourself?
Right now, I'm just editing. I mean, I might hire somebody to, make sure that the lettering and the coloring gets done, and blah blah blah.
Well, didn't Tom DeFalco come to hang out and see you at my show? So I'll give him a call.
Tom, I love Tom. Tom's the best.
Yeah. I didn't know he was at the show until he was already out in the parking lot. I was like, whoa, I could have told him to stay. So
yeah, he was there for a while. He was talking with everybody. But to answer your question before, any artist. I mean, I love looking at new artists, and I love, so you never know where the next new artist is going to come from.
I'm going to do my shameless plug. I'm an art rep now, and I have some amazing artists. But I will also do a very solid. Chris Mad is also an excellent artist. He's a great sequential artist. He knows what he's doing. He's pro. And he's been doing indie books, but I represent my artist, but I will tell you, Chris Mad is somebody you should go look at. Anyway.
All right, tell him to like me. Like me, Chris. Like me on Instagram, and I'll check out your stuff.
He's ready.
I will tell
he
you
says he's ready.
Okay. All right. I'll just tell you this one quick story. I was at a convention when I was younger, and when I say younger, I don't know. I guess I was 30. And I met this kid, and he had a notepad, a notebook, not a sketch pad, a notebook with like the 3 holes and the metal curly Q and the blue lines. And he said, I saw him showing his art. He's a very quiet guy. He's like, and the editor was like, yeah. And I was like, well, that's weird. And so I said, hey, let me check out your stuff. So he comes over, and I open up this book, and I'm completely blown away by the sheer rawness of his talent. I mean, at the time he was drawing almost exactly like Byrne. Almost, it was like holding original Byrne pages in your hand, drawn in a notebook. And I'm like, oh my God. I said, you are really amazing. And I said, are you going to be here tomorrow? And he goes, yeah, I got a room with my friends. And I said, well, ignore your friends tonight. I said, and I reached into my bag, and I had a 8-page story. And I said, take this and just do what you can, just so I can see, because you have a lot of pinups here. I want to see how you would handle story time.
Wow.
So he does the storytelling, and he comes back the next morning, and he shows me, and I'm like, oh my God. So we start working together. I'm doing Marvel Comics Presents with Rob Liefeld. We're doing the Beast story, and he starts Image, so he leaves, or he's going to leave, or I'm sorry, it wasn't Image. It was, I think maybe it was New Mutants. I don't know, but so he's not working on it anymore. So I say to the editors, listen, I've been working with this kid. He's really good. I think he, deserves a chance. And so they said, and they look and they go, that is really, really good. And so they said, okay, we'll give him a chance. So they have him, Marvel goes to send in the paperwork, and they go, he can't work for us because he's not 18. He's only 17. So in 3 months, when he turns 18, you can hire him. And I said, we'll wait. And his name was Jay Lee.
No kidding.
So that is the secret origin of Jay Lee. So
that is so cool.
Yeah, and he just, yeah. And even by the time he got to doing that stuff, he had worked his way out of his John Byrne stage. But it was just, but I see so many artists that will start out looking exactly like a particular artist. I mean, even Joe Mad's early stuff looked like Art Adams, like some of his early Excalibur stuff is almost impossible to differentiate between him and Art Adams. And then boom, he went off to become Joe Mad. So sometimes you got to encourage artists to, if that's what it takes to get them to learn to draw, that's fine. But then as they grow out of it, as they grow, you don't know what you're going to get. So, but awesome. So that's probably like the most amazing, biggest example of, talent. But there's many, many people over the years that I've bought in. So
I love hearing stories like that. That's pretty cool. That's really cool. So I usually leave with this question with guests. It's been great having you on and hearing from you. Thank you. If you could go back in time to your younger self when you were starting out, what advice would you give yourself?
I would say never, ever, ever pose for a picture with Norm Ratman.
And yet you did like 100 times.
I can only imagine what that has done to my career. So.
That's great. Well, I really can't say much about Norm in a negative way because he was a cheap date. So
I will say that I do have I always say there are two people in the world. There are people that can help you, and there are people that are in your way. But there's nobody that can stop you. And
nice.
I've there are many people that I've met that have helped me, and there are many people that have like, no, we don't, we don't want you here at this. We don't want you writing comic books. You're not good enough. You're not good enough to write movies, blah, blah. So there are people that can help you and people that are in your way, but there's nobody that can stop you. The only person that can stop you is
you.
Awesome.
I agree.
But so I don't know if I got that through the years. Maybe I'd give that advice to my younger self I didn't give up, so I don't know. It would have been useful, but.
Well, give up. Not only did you, obviously Happy Death Day was successful, and now you have Ball and Chain that could be the very next big thing that, beside after The Boys and everything everybody's looking at. And personally, I think it's a really interesting and creative and new story. So, and then the dynamic, if they do it well with your writing, between the couple that no longer wants to be around each other but has to be, I think that could be hilarious, and at the same time have moments of drama, realism, real life, because life is not one emotion. It's everything.
Yeah. Right. And I would say feel free to, anybody, I can't see the link. I don't know where it is, but I would just say, feel free to go to Scotty Lobdell and download the link, send it to friends for Christmas, whatever you want to do, it's yours. So
I just put it in the chat again. If you wouldn't mind hanging backstage for a moment as I say see to everybody, if you wouldn't mind, that'd be awesome. I have to tell you, it was a great pleasure talking with you.
This is the worst green room ever. There's no M&Ms. There's no drinks.
Norm took the
M&Ms.
M&Ms.
No other guests to talk to.
Norm took the M&Ms.
Okay.
Always blame Norm if the junk food's missing. It's always Norm. I don't know how he's not fat, but that's another story.
All right, do I have to hit something or do you hit it?
No, I will hit it, but I just want to say thank you for coming out. Everybody was excited to come see you.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I appreciate everything.
I just want to say thank you to, I want to thank you, but I also want to thank everybody that showed up tonight. So thanks, guys. It's nice that people still care.
Yeah.
Heather, great show. No Tang.
Yeah.
Keith Brunswick.
So cool, great show, Scott.
So cool, great show. Thank you, John.
Thank you, and hide the Tang. In all seriousness, I have to tell you. Oh, here's another one. Thank you, Scott Lobdell. You're a great and talented dude.
Steve. Thank you.
In all seriousness, I do miss the quote unquote old school people from Marvel and DC. That the comics, to me, the writing was just so much better, and this and that. And I did read Redhood and the Outlaws. And so you are absolutely relevant, and I don't know. I wish the publishers would, in my opinion, start going back to the well and going back to the people that really in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Obviously, whoever's alive in the 70s, but made comics what they are. You are one of them. I love the X-Men. I've always loved the X-Men. They're not what they were.
Well, keep in mind. Well, keep in mind, I was on the outside looking in, so I totally appreciate new talent getting the opportunity. So I think that's important to.
Well, I think they have a better chance now than ever, though, because the indie scene is blowing up, and people like you are doing creator-owned projects that they're going to get a better chance. I think, personally, but.
Cool.
Francesco said, "Best of luck and much success in your upcoming creator-owned project, Scott."
Is that the Francesco?
Yes, it is.
From Axe Body Wash?
Yes.
No. That's it. Hey, Francesco, how are you? What are you up to? I'm not on Facebook anymore, so the only way to reach me is through Instagram. So yeah, it just the internet is too weird.
It is. Steve also said amen to that. Bring them all back. The people that actually knew how to do them because they loved them. So yeah, man, I think there's a huge. I don't think the publishers realize how large a demographic wants you guys back. We want you in the fold on the big books.
It's interesting to me because I don't know that as sales go lower and lower and lower and lower, it's like, hey, let's do
Snowflake and Safe Space. Yeah.
Let's bring in. So.
Well, this is the litmus test. You ready? The Claremont book that's coming out with Brett Booth and Bill Sienkiewicz and Adelso Corona inking is supposed to be a retro 90s story. That'll be a litmus test to see. Those sales will tell you, that's where you'll know, how many people really want that stuff again. So.
I mean, that could be true. It could not be true in the sense that, like, when we were doing the X-Men, every story had to matter, and people would be like, oh, you tie all the stories together. It wasn't that we tied them together. They just had to matter, like they had to, we used to joke that if somebody sneezed in one book, in another book, somebody would have to say Gesundheit. It was like, it was tied in. Now comic books are so fragmented, that that does it. Everybody, everybody's just doing their own thing. And to me, if a comic book doesn't matter, it's not going to really find its audience,
right?
Unless it's designed to not matter. It's designed to be its own thing. So it could be that fans who have X amount of dollars to spend and want the X-Men are going to want to buy X-Men that are relevant to their comic buying experience,
right?
And might look at a standalone book and say, "Oh, that's a standalone book. I don't, that's
and
where
you may
I'm
be
not
right.
Put my money." So
you may be right, but I do hope and I do think that all the old school readers like myself are going to be looking at that closely to see if. Because I think we're going to want to support it to say, hey, this is what we want. This is where we can speak as consumers personally.
I would love to see a Claremont-assance. I would love that.
By the way, Jason Getchell, who said you had your toothbrush, he said, keep brushing those teeth, buddy. Take care.
Thanks, Jason.
Scott, you're welcome on anytime. Thanks for being here tonight. I appreciate it. I hope to see you at my future conventions again once things go back to normal. So
yeah, okay, I'll be happy to be there, and I'll buy more stuff from your kids.
Yeah, that was very kind of you.
You never know who's going to be the next artist.
That's
true. You never know who's going to be the next artist. Honestly,
that's true.
So.
Well, you could get that credit someday if you found her talent. So right. you discovered.
So you're just going to drop me out. Yeah. So you're just going to drop me out of the call, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, off the video, but you'll be backstage.
I don't have to do anything.
No, and you can still hear everything, and I'll be there in 1 minute.
Oh my God, so fascinating. Okay, bye.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on. That was Scott Lobdell. I thought it was a great interview. He's a funny guy, as you can see why he had a comedy career at one point. Thank you so much for coming out, and I do miss those X-Men days. Anyway, thank you for everybody for coming out tonight. Just to let you know, Russell Allen, who's a great indie creator with his own book, will be on Monday at 9 p.m. And then we have Bella Racklin on Tuesday, but it'll be at 3 p.m. because she lives in Israel, and with the time difference, that's how it works out. So just keep an eye out for the day. We also have Jan Dursema and Tom Mandrake on Friday. So please come check out Creatorcon Q&A, follow, continue. We always have great guests on here, whether it's the indie community or the big publishers, etc. And as you can see, we have a lot of fun when we talk. Thanks to everybody for coming out. Thanks for everybody asking your questions, even you, Norm. And everybody have a wonderful night. And I'll leave you with what I always leave you. Be legendary and have fun storming the castle.